What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall market. I'm also going to answer the question, is the stock market crash over? Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. Moomoo is an amazing global brokerage account that consists of many exclusive offers. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. And deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60. Just keep the money in the account for at least 60 days. You also qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends on June 3rd. You also qualify for free level 2 data if you keep at least $100 in the account. That's very useful for understanding market insights and what's happening with liquidity zones and the options chains. So check out my link down below. Now let's talk about what's happening with the stock market. So one thing that's worth mentioning is that there's a lot of manipulation in the markets. There were many instances where it looked like the market was trying to form a top, only to break out even higher. And as of right now, I do want to mention that SPY and the QQQ are still looking quite bullish, as there is still some more upside to go. But the question is, are we done with the downside now? Is the market fully bottomed? Are we going to see the market rally to new all-time highs from here? I want to mention that regardless of if that happens, I don't think that we're done with the downside yet. So I'm going to break down exactly why that is. So the first thing you'll see right off the bat is that there's a lot of gaps in the market. If you actually go back and do like a gap analysis, so for example, not every gap in history has to get filled, but typically gaps do get filled. So if you go back to SPY, for example, in 2024, when we saw this big rally after that big sell-off we got in the early months, right, we had a bunch of gaps left on SPY right over here. There's actually gaps left at 505, gaps left over here at 511. I know it's a little hard to see. So at this time, SPY was gapping up, gapping up, gapping up, and going, and we left all these gaps. And did they end up filling? Well, we did return to about 510 to fill, a lot of these gaps over here, but we didn't fully fill this gap up all the way down to 505 until over a year later, we did eventually come down to fill that gap right over here during this big dump that happened on SPY just a couple of weeks ago, technically. So that's something that's worth mentioning. All right. And then there's many instances where we had gaps that end up getting filled. So for example, right here, we had this gap over here that was unfilled, a big gap all the way down to 577. So we pushed up. We saw this nice rally, but then we eventually came back down to fill this gap. During this rally back up, as we pushed towards the all-time high in SPY, we left a gap, a gap, a gap. We have like 4 or 5 gaps. We eventually saw a lot of shuffling around there before we ended up coming down to fill these gaps again. And then another example is right here. We gapped up and then we dumped, gap down, dumped, and then we ended up coming back up to fill those gaps. So here's what's happening right now on the charts. And this is the reason why I'm talking about this. SPY still has these giant gaps over here. There's a big gap right over here to fill, right? There's another one right over here. We have just a bunch of them over here. There's another one over here. So there's all these gaps left on SPY, which is indicative of the fact that there might be another moment when this thing gets a sell-off. That's the first simple way of looking at this, that we still haven't filled all these gaps. So SPY is rallying right now. There is upside potential. We're going to likely continue to push. Even if SPY goes up to like 575, that's awesome. But there's going to be another time when SPY returns to fill this gap back down to at least 526. I could be looking for even like the 510s. That's going to be where this big support is right over here. I do think we're going to return here again. I just don't know exactly when that's going to be. And that's the very, very difficult thing about this market, because it's a little hard to predict every single thing when there's so much news coming out about tariffs from our Fed to the GDP numbers. There's so much data coming out. So that's why it's best to take this like one step at a time. But notice on the QQQ, it also has a gap all the way down here at 444. So doesn't mean we have to make new lows. It's possible we do. Even if we don't make new lows, if the ultimate bottom is in, there is going to be another instance when the QQQ comes down to 444. Now, for now, like I said in my video yesterday, I could see the QQQ push for 494. We could continue to rally for now because of all the excitement and hype about a potential US-China trade deal. So we're just going to follow the price action, and we're going to be very, very open-minded, and we're going to be very adaptive to this market, because for now we're bullish. The direction is up right now, but it will eventually come back down. The QQQ dumping to 444 is going to easily be another it's going to be like a 35 plus move to the downside, or even like a 45 plus move to the downside. So keep that in mind. 45 points is how much we're going to be dumping eventually. I just don't know the exact timing. So, what are some of the things that could cause this? Well, I just want to mention that President Trump was talking about a couple of important things. When asked about a recession, President Trump said last night that no, he does not think that we are in a recession. He thinks that the US economy is in what's known as a transition period, and the country is going to do a fantastic job. That's what President Trump said. Um, One thing that's worth mentioning is when he was asked about this, President Trump says that he doesn't think that's going to happen. He doesn't think that we're in a recession. He says that everything is going to be okay, and he once again mentioned that we shouldn't worry about that. So, when asked about higher prices, President Trump did mention that prices could go up because of the tariffs. He did admit that, but he's saying that everything is going to be okay and that it's going to be worth it. President Trump also is saying that gas is getting very, very cheap. So are groceries and eggs. He claims that so far, and that we're in only a transition stage. And he's saying that there's no inflation and that the Fed needs to lower its rates. So that's what President Trump just said. So the thing about this is that it all depends, right? Are we going to see the tariffs come back? Because President Trump also mentioned that I saw in another report that he's saying that there could be more tariffs coming for pharmaceuticals and a bunch of different things like that. So he did say that we should be expecting tariffs on drug imports in a month or so, and there could be more tariffs coming. So that's the thing that's making things a little bit difficult because we don't know exactly how this is going to pan out, right? Are we going to see the tariffs jump completely? Are the tariffs just going to be decreasing to some extent? I think a big factor in this is going to be what happens between the US and China and our trade deal. So that's going to be very important. China has said that they're evaluating an offer from the US to hold talks on tariffs. That is some very, very good news. But it depends. What do we get out of this? Do the tariffs decrease to like 50% at the most, depending on the product, of course? Do they end up completely going away? It all depends, right? So that's the thing you have to remember. What do we see out of the trade deal? To what extent do the tariffs decrease? And what does this lead to moving forward? Warren Buffett spoke that he doesn't think that the US should use tariffs or trade as a weapon. He has a different opinion, so of course, different people have different opinions on this. But President Trump is using tariffs to get different countries to negotiate and do what he wants them to do. That's his way of once again negotiating. So we'll see what that leads to. So with that being said, like that's the thing about this market. It's a little bit less predictable. It's really hard to predict how everything's going to pan out. Will we see more tariff threats? Will we see the tariffs just completely dump? Um, once we end up getting these deals, we'll see about that. So I think that's the most important thing we're going to be waiting for. That's what the Fed is waiting for. Now, when it comes to the stock market, I want to mention that there are going to be some economic hardships coming. I still believe that the first big sign of this is the fact that the US GDP growth turned negative in Q1 of 2025. It's the first time this was reported in years, actually. And with this happening, okay, with the negative GDP growth, this could point in direction that there is not only a slowdown in our overall output, but this could get us closer to a potential recession. We won't know until a lot later on if this is going to be what leads to that, but it depends on these tariffs and factors like that. Right now, the Fed has about a 97% chance of keeping rates the same. So we're going to wait and see what they say about that. So those are going to be all the different factors sort of like affecting us. So what's my view of the market? In all honesty, like I said before, I still think the market's going to go a bit higher because we're very excited about the fact that President Trump is saying we're not in a recession. We're excited about the fact that there's going to be a lot of trade talk between the US and China. And then we have President Trump and Lutnick saying that the US is going to be announcing deals with India, Japan, and South Korea specifically, and even more countries. So the stock market likes this. It's very excited about this. But even if we do see the QQQ push for 490 to 494, we'll see if we could break that or not to get close to 500. We'll just have to see how high we go. I do want to mention that if you look at like our 4-hour time frame, there is a slight bearish divergence that's starting to develop over here, but there's no sign of us turning around yet. So nonetheless, we're still a bit more bullish, and I could see this continuing to push. But like I said before, regardless of how high we go, the QQQ will return to 444 again, mark my words, or even lower than that, all the way down to like 440 or so, maybe even lower. But we will eventually see at least a 10% drop again. It's going to happen again Whether it's this month, whether it's after, during the third quarter, I don't know exactly when the timing is going to be. So it doesn't make sense to just gamble in the market, just bet everything that we're going to crash. It doesn't make sense to do that. You have to wait for confirmation. So we're just going to ride the price action. The QQQ is still bullish, looking for the 490s. But yes, I just want to answer the question that I don't think the crash is over. I don't think the market corrective phase is done with. We're going to eventually return to fill these gaps on SPY and the QQQ. SPY will eventually return to the 520s. If not, I would say this 510 area is going to be a very, very pivotal level to watch for. It's a very, very big level in terms of support. You could see we've tested that level many times historically. So I do think we will return to the 510 to 520 area again, but not yet. We're still bullish with the trade talks, so we could try to go a bit higher. We could be pushing for the 570 area or even 575. But this does open opportunities, and we'll have to see what happens with the news. I'm just going to take it one day at a time. Keep in mind, we also have FOMC on Wednesday, with Jerome Powell giving a speech and more data. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with all of this. It's not just SPY and the QQQ. Even the IWM has a big gap at 187. I think that's there's a lot of gaps below, and there's more potential for downside. ES has a gap all the way down to 5,300, which will eventually fill. SPX as well. NQ as well. There's a big gap all the way down to 18,400, which is quite a distance away. We will eventually return towards these like lower levels again. It will eventually happen. We're not ready yet. We're still bullish, but I'm just saying it will happen. Tesla will eventually return to 237 or below. We're not there yet. I just want to say about Tesla, when you look at like our 4 hour, I am seeing a potential bullish structure right here. So we're in a consolidation phase, but this does sort of resemble a flag. And if we get some kind of breakout, whether it's good news or some kind of Chinese deal, which is going to be big for Tesla, this could still increase and get closer to 300. It's still possible we run quite a bit more, but that does not mean Tesla has fully bottomed or that Tesla is completely done with any downside. I'd say that's a better way of looking at it. Yes, this could rally to 300, even 320. It's still possible it continues to go higher. It is looking a bit more bullish to me because we have like a quadruple bottom, but it will return to the 230s again. It's going to come again. I don't know if it's going to be this month, if it's going to be next month, if it's going to be in the third quarter. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I do believe sometime this year we will return back down. We just have to take it one day at a time. NVIDIA will return to the 999 area. Again, there's going to be a big dump in NVIDIA coming again one day. I don't know if it's going to be after earnings, whatever the catalyst is going to be. We are bullish looking for now. For the most part, we have to see if we could hold above 115 to push higher. There's also a gap over here around the 120s, so I still think that NVIDIA could be pushing higher for now, but there are a lot of gaps left, and it will eventually return to them. Apple, same thing. There's gaps left at like 194. I think there were more under here. Actually, I think we filled most of them, so we're actually doing okay. But we'll see. Apple could try to rally to try to fill this gap, and then we'll see how that goes. Another big red flag about the market is the VIX has a very, very clear falling wedge. And on top of this, we have a lot of gaps on the VIX. So I think the main gap is over here on the daily at this 37.5 area. So I do think this is bearish for now. The VIX is bearish for now, meaning it's going to be dipping more. It might even return closer to our 200 EMA at the 20 area. But there's going to come a time when this thing forms a bottom and this thing starts to break out to the 40 area again. That's going to be, I think, when we see the S&P 500 dump to like the below 5,300 area. That's when SPY is going to be dumping to like the 520s, if not 510s. That's when the QQQ dumps all the way down towards much lower levels, such as like the 444 area. So yeah, I do think that the VIX will eventually get some kind of breakout. I just don't know if it's going to happen in May or if it's going to happen in June. We have to wait for now. For now, the VIX is dipping and the market's bullish, so we're just going to follow it one day at a time. It's very difficult to predict exactly when the market's going to get that rug pull until we get to at least some confirmation on the chart. Because for now, we're just going to listen to see what President Trump has to say about a lot of different things. What happens with these tariffs? For now, he did mention there could be an increase in some pharmaceutical tariffs, but simultaneously, like I said before, the market is just very excited about these trade deals with China and all these different countries. So that could still fuel a rally for the time being. We'll see what happens with more GDP numbers, our inflationary numbers, and the Fed. We just have to be very patient, and we're going to take it one day at a time. I'll keep you guys updated. So for now, that's my answer. Will the market rally more? I still think there's room to go higher. Yes. For now, we're bullish, but we're not done yet with the selling. There's going to be another instance when SPY, the QQQ, Tesla, Nvidia, Apple, and all these stocks dump again. I do think there's going to be another big, like 10% plus correction again at the very least. It's going to happen again one day, whether it's this month, next month, or during the third quarter. I also believe it's going to happen this year sometime. So we have time within the next 6 months. I do believe it's going to happen. I just don't know exactly when. We just have to wait and see, depending on how these factors pan out, because the news is changing every single day. That's the best level-headed way of looking at things, just being very patient and waiting to see how things end up going. And the best thing to do is just be patient, guys. And I'll let you guys know how things are looking on the news, if the market's about to reject or not. And with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and peace out. Excuse me.